All right, question of the day. What is your favorite game that you can't put into a genre? Now, the reason I say this is because we're taking a look at Imperium, mostly Horizons today, but Imperium as a whole. This is a deck builder. This is a civilization game, and both of those sentences would work. However, it's not a 4X game, but it's not a deck builder like DC Deck Builder. You're not buying kicks in this game. In fact, you're rarely buying cards at all unless your powers allow you to do it. So really, you are leaning into your civilization, but it's still got elements of a deck builder. Your deck is building, and you're using those cards. However, you're also just not playing them and losing in this hand. You can play them into your tableau and use them later. So a lot going on in Imperium. Interesting system. Let's take a look at it right now. Hey, before we go any further, we have been slinging the Dice Tower Space hoodies and shirts off the shelves like crazy. We've got the first orders out. We're doing a second run right now, so if you want to get your Dice Tower hoodie, Space hoodie, and Space shirt, put those orders in right now at dicetowerstore.com, and we will get those to you within about a week and a half from you watching this video, unless you're watching it later, at which point this is probably irrelevant. All right, so this is Imperium Horizons setup. Now, the reason I say Horizons is because I have all three versions. But Imperium Horizons comes with a couple of little accoutrements to make it a little nicer. So you have these little player aids that show you where to put your decks of cards. Who, depending on which civilization you pick, you're going to have different things here, different things here. You're going to have a different deck. And here's the kicker. This game plays very asymmetrically. Each of the civilizations has a certain type of play style. And because we're in Horizons here, you go from the Taino people, the original in the Caribbean, and then also all the way up to Martians in this one. This one adds Martians and cultists, which are kind of strange. I think we've had Atlanteans before and Utopians, but for the most part, these are all historically based civilizations. You can do three things on your turn. There are three types of turns you can take. You can take a action turn where you play your cards out of your hand. It's a deck builder. You're drawing 5 cards, you're playing cards. However, it's also a tableau builder. So when you play a card down, you're going to place it over here. Now, some of them have cost on them to play, and again, it all depends on your civilization. That's why it's hard to do a straightforward teach of this game, because everyone plays so differently. And what's cool is in the new rulebook, all of the civilizations are listed, and it shows the difficulty, it shows tips on how to play them. But I just want to show you, look at the cultist rules there versus the Carthaginians. So there's a major difference, and the color coding here tells you which set it's in. Now, like I said, I have all of these, but it also teaches you how to do it if there's a bot needed, like the Arthurian bot. You can thank David Terzi for that. He's the bot master. Now, on your turn, you can do that action in which you play cards out. Now, you have also, depending on your civilization, a certain number of exhaust tokens. Exhaust and actions are not the same thing. You're going to get action tokens and exhaust tokens, which means some of your civilizations out here can do, yes, the actions, which would be playing a card. And some cards will say, do this as an action, and then others will say, pay this cost, a free action, right? But you can also spend as many exhaust tokens as you have to do things from your tableau. So you're going to be placing cards over here in your tableau, as well as playing cards out as part of the tableau as an action. Okay, now the thing that makes this very different from a regular deck builder is that when you go to redraw, let's say you shuffle all your cards in your discard pile and you have to redraw and you can't because there's nothing there. So first you'll take the top card from this stack here, you'll throw it in your pile, you'll shuffle them up, and then you will draw back up to 5. As this depletes, you're going to eventually get to this, which will turn you into from barbarian to a civilization or an empire. The thing is, these tags matter. And again, as any rule in this game, there's a caveat for a certain civilization. The Taino, for instance, do not have empire. They're not barbarians, they're free, I can't remember the name, free islanders or free people or something like that. So you couldn't play a blue card with the Taino people. Now, you'll flip this over and you'll become now, okay, we're an empire. So now you can only play cards that are blue. You can't play the red cards anymore. Then you have other things that will let you buy cards from up here in the market. Now, the other thing you can do is a breakthrough action on an innovation or I believe it's called innovation turn, in which you just take one of these. Now, normally, everything except land cards, which are yellow, will have unrest under them. There's a couple losing conditions in this game, or end game conditions in this game, I should say. If the unrest pile is empty, and some of these will come from your deck, from your civilization, if they have an arrow on them, that will go up there in that deck. If the unrest pile is empty, you'll go into collapse, and you'll count points based on that. Not actual points, it's based on unrest cards. However, if the King of Kings card deck is empty, or someone takes their last of the development cards here, whatever they're called, development area, you'll then count points after everyone has equal turns after that. When this runs out, and you become an Empire and all these cards are added to your deck, you then start taking these. Now you're going to choose these. You don't have to take the top one. And you're going to have to pay the cost associated with that. You can buy cards out here. You can do that. And the last thing you can do is an action in which, instead of taking actions or taking a breakthrough, you can just get rid of unrest cards out of your hand, which replenishes this deck. So it's almost like you have to work together with the other player to be like, hey, somebody's going to have to take this action, otherwise we're going to be out of unrest cards. Now, there's other cards that let you do that. At the end of the game, you'll score points. There's points based on the cards, points based on your civilization cards, points based through the deck. There's just points all around. So to call this a deck builder is unfair. To call it a civilization game is unfair. It's a mixture of the two in a way that I've never seen before, but there's so many different civilizations to try, and they all play vastly different from each other. What's interesting, though, is that if you play the Maya and the Olmecs, they both use masks, and they're in the deck, but they use them very differently. So even though there's similarities, and similarities based on regional areas of the world, they still play differently based on that civilization. So that is roughly how you play Imperium deck builder, with a lot of caveats.
All right, so that's Imperium Horizons. Now, as you've seen, this year we've been doing a rubric system where we grade things on a much more rigid scale, or not rigid, more defined scale. So the way we do this, we go concept, board layout, mechanics. Now, I have added a caveat to mechanics of ease of entry. This game caused me to do that, but also I needed to do it anyway. Art direction, art, gameplay, rulebook, and then the overall final score, which is an aggregate of those scores put together and averaged out based on the amount of categories. Now, the weight of those is probably different for different people. Some people may view the rulebook as more important, or art is more important. Mechanics is the most important, right? But this is kind of just my thoughts in the moment. And if I ever needed to adjust a score based on that, I would, but I would tell you ahead of time. But so far this year, we have not adjusted any scores. We've been basing them on this rubric. So let's start here with concept. The concept is brilliant. I love history. I'm a history nerd, major history nerd. So the concept is a 9 out of 10 for me. I love just playing all these different civilizations. It reminds me of Age of Empires, where you're like, oh, of course I know who those people are, right? And so I really enjoy the idea that there's a lot of historical significance here. Now, and one of the cool things we'll get to in a minute is the blue cards here are allegiance cards, or alliance cards with the other civilizations. So you actually see the ones that are in the game, even if you're not playing as them, because you have an alliance with them. So pretty cool. Board layout. I don't like the board layout, only because, not to say that there's anything ugly about it. It's not an art idea. It's just the fact that there's a lot going on in this game, and it takes a lot of space. And even with these helpful tools that come in Horizons, it still just feels a little bit of a, let's just throw it on the table, right? It doesn't have a presence to me. It feels like a card game, even though it's trying to be a civilization game at the same time. So I wish there was a board actually for this center area, instead of these three little things here that you put out for the different decks and stacks. So mechanics. Now, let me take a little bit of time on this one. Mechanics, I give it an, board layout was a 6. Mechanics, I give an 8. So the reason I give it an 8 is because, and it probably would be an 8.5, but it is very hard to get into this game. The rulebook is good, as we'll talk about in a minute, but it's still hard to learn this game straight from the rulebook because every civilization plays different. Yes, there are normal rules of do this, or this on your turn. But because of the differentiation of all the different civilizations, it makes it a lot more difficult to get into. So it's not an easy game to just pick up and play. Like, you couldn't just pick this up on say the Dice Tower cruise and be like, hey, we'll play in 30 minutes. Let me relearn this game. You're going to need some more time and homework and play it wrong, and then have your friend teach you as you play it with him. Hypothetically. Looking at you, Will. Good man. But I give it an 8 for mechanics because I do like how this plays. So every single civilization plays different. Now, when you hear that in a lot of games, you go, oh, well, they maybe can do 2 actions instead of 1, or maybe they can choose the same action twice like inside. No, what I'm saying is it is vastly different. The Taino and the Maya play completely different. Now, which is funny because they're also in very similar regions of the world, but they play vastly different from each other. And I recommend that you play the higher stars. It gives you a star difficulty rating for each civilization. To me, the higher stars are more rewarding, whereas some of them, while based on the historical or historicity of these people groups, are somewhat drier than others. In case in point, the Taino is a very dry one to play. You're collecting lands and exploring, and it's just over. That felt very rinse and repeat. Whereas the Maya, man, there's a lot of going on in there. And then you get the cultist where you're doing something completely different. And then you have Martians where you can accidentally blow up the planet, which, again, moving a little to more of the absurd, but it's still interesting to me how they manage to put these mechanics into the same game where somebody can be playing the Taino versus the cultist and the Taino may win based on their very simple system versus the cultist having to do all this crazy cast a spell or do the ritual sort of thing. Now, that gives us for an 8 solidly on game mechanics. Now, art direction's an 8.5 because, to be fair, the symbols are on the cards and they're also listed back here, so it's pretty straightforward. There's never a moment where you go, I just don't know what that card does. So 8.5 for art direction, which kind of shows you how to play the game on the visible material of the game. Art is a 9 out of 10. This is some of my favorite board game art. I just love this style. I love all of it, from the locations to the... Now, this is the same image for each one, but you get a different civilization group in the blue cards. Your specialty cards, they really are just really well done. The Magyars here. This image is classic, right? We've seen this in from Scythe to Age of Empires. You know, you've got the horse rider with the hawk on its hand. Like, I love that, right? And so all of the different civilizations and every one of them has a very unique art, not unique to each other, but I'm saying this in the game collectively. Very unique, very great art. This is a 9 out of 10 for art. Gameplay. Gameplay is great. I like it. This is also an 8 out of 10. I know I kind of covered most of this in the mechanics, but I like what you do. I like that you can take your turn, and unlike a normal deck builder, you're not just going, well, this is all I have this time. Let me throw these out, wait for next time. No, you have cards in your tableau already that you can use instead with your exhaust tokens, which to me is pretty great. So 8 out of 10 on gameplay. Rulebook, also an 8 out of 10. Now, with the caveat, the game's not easy to learn, period. It doesn't matter what the rule book says. It's not an easy game to learn because you need to know how to play the mechanics of the game, but then you need to know how to play your civilization. So overall, all of that aggregated gives us an 8.1, which we round down. We don't round up to an 8.5, but it rounds down to an 8 solid. So a solid 8 out of 10. That is Imperium Horizons and really the whole system because we played with multiple of the other races and civilizations as well. So 8 out of 10, solid game. Really enjoy this. But know ahead of time you need to prep and do a little homework. So that is Imperium Horizons, Legends, and Classics, I think the original one's called. So I'm Brian Drake here on the Dice Tower. Make sure to follow us on Twitter, Instagram, etc. at Dice Tower Brian. Until next time, we'll see you.